Evan Cole had explored many strange places in the galaxy, but the ancient ruin on the desert moon felt different the moment he stepped inside. The air was heavy, silent, almost like it was waiting for something. The locals had warned him many times. They said no one who entered this temple returned the same. Some even said the place was alive. But Evan was an archaeologist, and curiosity always won. He walked deeper into the ruin, his boots echoing softly against the stone floor. Strange symbols covered the walls. They glowed faintly whenever he passed, as if reacting to his presence. Evan paused, took a picture, and whispered to himself, "This is older than anything I've ever seen." But then he saw her. At the center of a wide, broken hall stood a stone statue of a woman, not human, alien. Her skin was smooth stone, her hair carved like flowing crystal, her face frozen in a silent cry. She was beautiful, but there was pain in her expression, as if she had turned to stone in the middle of fear. Evan slowly walked closer. Something inside him felt pulled toward her, like invisible energy calling him. He touched the statue's hand and froze. The stone wasn't cold. It was warm. For a moment he thought he imagined it. But then he felt it again, a soft rhythmic pulse. A heartbeat. He stepped back in shock. "You're alive?" he whispered, even though he knew it was impossible. The room trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. The walls lit up with bright blue symbols. Evan turned around, confused and alert. He knew ruins sometimes had traps or energy surges, but this felt different. It felt like a warning. Then the statue's finger moved. Evan stumbled back, his heart racing. He stared at her hand. A crack formed along her stone wrist, another along her shoulder. The air filled with soft cracking sounds, like ice breaking. Her stone chest slowly rose, and a breath escaped her lips. Evan couldn't believe what he was seeing. Her stone skin glowed faintly, and warm light leaked through the cracks. She wasn't just waking up, she was coming back to life. He leaned forward and whispered gently, "It's okay. I'm here. Don't be afraid." He didn't know that this moment, his voice speaking those simple words, would become her very first memory. The ruin suddenly shook harder. The ground split near his feet. Evan realized he didn't have time to think. Whether she was dangerous or not didn't matter. She was alive, trapped, and scared. And he couldn't leave her. Using all his strength, Evan grabbed the half-stone, half-living woman and pulled her up. The stone flakes fell off her body as he carried her toward the exit. She was heavier than anything he had ever lifted. But he didn't stop. A loud roar echoed through the hall as massive stone slabs fell from the ceiling. Evan pushed forward, each step harder than the last. The entrance was closing behind collapsing debris. He had seconds left. Just a little more. "Stay with me," he said, even though she still couldn't open her eyes. He didn't know if she could hear him, but somehow he felt she did. With one final jump, Evan threw both of them through the last opening just as the roof fell, sealing the ruin forever. They landed in the bright desert sunlight. Evan breathed heavily, covered in dust and sweat. The woman lay in the sand beside him. Her stone skin was melting away, turning into soft, glowing flesh. Strange glowing marks appeared across her shoulders and chest, patterns he had never seen. Her eyes remained closed, but the glowing marks pulsed in perfect rhythm with her heartbeat. Evan felt a chill, not of fear but of realization. He didn't just discover an artifact. He didn't just save a lost alien. He had awakened someone ancient, someone powerful, and someone whose first memory was his voice. The wind blew across the sand. Evan looked at her face, now almost fully alive, and whispered, "Who were you? And why were you asleep for so long?" But deep inside, he already knew this was only the beginning. Evan carried the half-awake alien woman into his small research ship. The sun outside was too hot, and her skin, now turning soft and real, looked fragile, almost glowing with heat. He placed her gently on a medical bed, The ship's lights dimmed automatically, reacting to her strange energy. For a moment, Evan just stood there breathing hard. He had rescued many artifacts before, but never a living being who turned from stone into flesh in his arms. He wasn't sure if she was dangerous, but the way her body had clung to life, it felt like she had been waiting for someone. Maybe waiting for him. Her chest rose slowly. Her breathing was uneven, like someone learning how to breathe again. After centuries, Evan checked her pulse with a scanner. The device beeped in confusion. The energy inside her was unlike anything in its database. "Easy. You're safe," he whispered again. Her fingers twitched. The glowing lines across her skin slowly spread like blooming flowers. They formed patterns that looked ancient, beautiful, and powerful. Evan couldn't stop staring. She wasn't just an alien woman, she was something rare. Something forgotten by time. Suddenly, her eyes opened. They were silver, bright like liquid metal, reflecting the ship's lights. She blinked slowly, her pupils widening as she tried to understand where she was. Her gaze moved around the room, confused, and then landed on Evan. For a second she froze. Then her breathing steadied, like his presence comforted her. Evan lifted his hands gently. "It's okay. You're safe here. I won't hurt you." She didn't speak. She only stared at him, trying to read the meaning of his words. Then she reached towards his voice, not his face, not his body, but his voice. As if that sound was the only thing she recognized in this new world. Her fingers touched his chest, right where his words came from. The moment she made contact, the glowing marks on her skin pulsed brighter. Evan felt a wave of warm energy flow through him, not painful, but powerful, like a gentle spark. "You remember me?" he asked softly. She nodded even though she didn't fully understand. She remembered only one thing, the voice that told her, "I'm here." A voice that pulled her from darkness into life. She tried to speak. Her lips moved, trembling. A soft sound escaped like a whisper, but she couldn't form words. Her body shook slightly from the effort. "It's okay," Evan said. "Take your time." She placed a hand on her own throat, confused when no sound came out. Her eyes filled with frustration, then fear. She didn't know who she was. She didn't know where she was. All she knew was that she could not speak and that her mind was mostly empty. Evan took a small holographic tablet and drew a symbol of himself. Then he pointed at his chest. "Jivan." She stared at the symbol, then at him. Slowly, she lifted her hand and traced a glowing mark on her arm. A soft pattern appeared in the air, a floating symbol made of light. Evan watched carefully. "Is that your name?" She nodded. The symbol shifted, forming 3 glowing shapes. Evan whispered the sound gently, unsure. "Lyra?" Her eyes brightened. Yes, that was her name. Evan smiled. "Lyra. Okay. Lyra, you're safe." Her fingers closed around his wrist. She held on tightly, as if afraid he would disappear. Evan understood she had woken in a strange world, with no voice and no memories. His presence was the only thing she trusted. Suddenly, the ship's alarm flashed a small warning. Evan checked the panel and frowned. A strange signal had been detected near the ruins, something powerful, something scanning for energy. He looked at Lyra. "Someone else felt your awakening." Lyra's eyes widened. She grabbed his arm, fear returning like a shadow. The glowing marks on her skin dimmed slightly, reacting to her emotions. She remembered nothing except darkness, but she felt danger. She felt something coming. Evan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I won't let anything happen to you, I promise." Her silver eyes softened. She believed him completely, but outside the ship, in the deep desert wind, a distant shape moved, watching, searching. Someone knew Lyra was alive again, and they wanted her back. Inside the ship, Lyra sat with her knees pulled close, watching every move Evan made. Her silver eyes followed him like he was a light in the middle of darkness. She still could not speak, but her glowing patterns pulsed softly whenever he came. Near, it was clear, his voice, his presence, his calmness. They were her only connection to this new life. Evan gently placed a tray of warm, nutrient food beside her. "Try this," he said softly. Lyra stared at the food with curiosity. She touched it lightly with her fingers, testing the temperature, the weight. Then she looked at Evan for confirmation before taking a small bite. The glow on her skin brightened. She liked it. Evan smiled. "Good, you're doing great." Lyra didn't understand all his words, but she understood his tone. Soft, patient, kind. Every time he spoke, she felt safer. She began copying his gestures. When he nodded, she nodded. When he pointed, she looked in that direction. Her mind was learning, repairing, trying to remember what it meant to be alive. Evan opened his holoscanner again, studying her glowing patterns. They were changing, responding to her emotions, her movements, even his speech. These markings, they're alive, he murmured. They look like ancient energy channels. Maybe your people used them for communication, or power, or something else. Lyra watched the hologram with interest. She lifted her hand and traced the air. A small glowing line appeared, like a ribbon of light. She shaped it slowly, carefully, until a symbol formed. Evan leaned forward. "What does that mean?" Lyra tapped her chest, then her head. "A memory?" Evan guessed. She nodded. The light symbol dissolved. Evan stepped closer and sat beside her. "Can you show me more?" Lyra hesitated. Something inside her felt heavy. She closed her eyes. For a moment, her breathing slowed. The markings on her skin dimmed. She tried to pull a memory, but it was like trying to grab smoke with her hands. Finally, she shaped another symbol in the air, a cracked circle. Evan frowned. "Broken? Something broken?" Lyra nodded again, this time with a shadow in her eyes. She remembered darkness, pain, a voice shouting, a flash of light, but everything else was lost. The moment she tried to push deeper, her heart raced and she pulled her hands back as if touching fire. Evan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "It's okay. You don't have to force it." She opened her eyes slowly and looked at him, relieved that he didn't demand more. To distract her, Evan began teaching her simple human words. He pointed at himself. "Evan." Then he pointed at her. "Lyra." She nodded and touched her chest proudly. "Lyra." He pointed at the window. "Sky." She tried to say the sound. Her lips moved, but only a soft breath came out. She grew frustrated. Again, the glow on her skin flickered unevenly. Evan quickly shook his head. No, it's okay. Speaking takes time. You're learning faster than anyone I've ever seen." Lyra looked down, embarrassed. She wanted to speak. She wanted to tell him what little she remembered. She wanted to thank him. But her voice was broken, silent, like something inside her had been taken away. Suddenly, the ship's sensors beeped again. The same signal as before, stronger, closer. Evan checked the display. "They're scanning the desert. Whoever they are, they know something woke up inside the ruins." Lyra's whole body tensed. She grabbed Evan's wrist tightly. Her eyes turned bright silver, filled with fear. She didn't remember the faces, the names, or the reasons. But she remembered the feeling, danger, betrayal, and being frozen in stone. Evan gently squeezed her hand. "I'm not letting them take you, I promise." Lyra stared at him for a long moment. Then she lifted her hand again and formed another symbol in the air. This one glowed brighter, shaped like a rising sun. Evan studied it. "Hope? Light? Safe?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, safe." That's what he made her feel. But before Evan could speak again, the ship's lights flickered. A shadow moved outside the window, quick, silent, scanning the sand. Someone was close. Someone searching for her. Lyra pressed her forehead against Evan's shoulder, trembling. Her memories were coming back slowly. But the danger was coming fast. The ship's sensors kept flashing red as something moved outside, circling slowly in the desert. Evan pressed his face close to the window. But the sandstorm made it impossible to see clearly. Only a faint silhouette, tall, slim, with glowing armor, appeared and disappeared as the wind shifted. Evan whispered, "They're not animals. They're people." Lyra's body stiffened. She stepped back from the window, her glowing markings dimming with fear. Her hands trembled as she formed a symbol in the air, sharp, jagged like a claw. Evan frowned. "Danger?" She nodded quickly. Before Evan could grab a weapon, a loud metallic bang shook the outer hull, then another. Whoever was outside wasn't trying to hide anymore. They were testing the ship's strength. Evan pulled Lyra behind him. "Stay close." Another hit echoed through the hull, harder this time. A deep, mechanical voice shouted from outside, speaking in a language Evan didn't recognize. But Lyra understood. Her eyes widened in terror, and she clutched Evan's shirt. "What did he say?" Evan asked softly. Lyra formed a symbol in the air, an X over a circle. Evan tried to guess. "Stop? Surrender?" She shook her head violently. She made another symbol, something like a falling star being cut in half. Evan whispered the interpretation that came to him. "They want to destroy you?" Lyra nodded, her breath shaking. Evan straightened, anger growing inside him. "No. One is destroying you." A loud hiss cut through the air as the side hatch began to glow. Someone was trying to cut through it with a plasma blade. Evan hurried to the control panel. "I need to move the ship before they breach inside." He pressed several buttons, but the engines only sputtered weakly. Sand in the thrusters. "Perfect timing," he muttered. He grabbed his pulse rifle and turned to Lyra. "We have to run. Are you able to walk?" Lyra nodded, but her legs trembled. Still, she forced herself forward. Evan noticed she wasn't scared for herself. She was scared for him. He opened the emergency exit on the opposite side of the ship, and a blast of hot wind rushed inside. He helped Lyra step down into the sand. The desert stretched endlessly, but they didn't have a choice. They had to disappear before the hunters broke through. They ran. Or at least Evan ran while half supporting Lyra. Her steps grew stronger with each second, but the glowing patterns on her arms flickered like a warning. Behind them, the ship door burst open with a sharp explosion. 3 armored figures stepped out. They were tall, wearing curved helmets with long glowing lines on their chests. They moved with precision, no hesitation, no confusion. They were soldiers. Elite ones. One of them pointed at Lyra and shouted in the same harsh language. Lyra flinched and hid behind Evan again. "What are they saying?" Evan whispered. She formed a symbol, 2 hands pulling something back into darkness. Evan's heart sank. "They want to take you back." The hunters began charging toward them. Evan fired a warning shot into the sand. "Stay back." The shot didn't scare them. They advanced faster. Lyra suddenly stepped forward, raising her hands. The glowing lines on her body brightened, reacting to her fear. A low hum filled the air, and the sand around her feet began to swirl. Evan stared in shock. She wasn't doing it on purpose, but her power was waking. The hunters hesitated for half a second. Then they opened fire. Bright energy bolts streaked across the desert. Evan grabbed Lyra and pulled her into a natural stone trench. The blasts hit the rocks above them, turning them into hot fragments. Evan held her close. "Lyra, listen. I know you're scared, but you're not alone. I'm here. I'll protect you." Her breathing steadied. She lifted her hand and formed another symbol, a small glowing circle with 3 lines rising from it. Evan tried to understand. "Together?" She nodded quickly and placed her hand over his heart. The hunters began climbing down into the trench. Lyra closed her eyes. The glowing marks on her skin exploded with bright light. A wave of energy rippled outward, hitting the sand like thunder. The hunters were thrown back violently, their armor crackling from the impact. When the light faded, Lyra collapsed weakly into Evan's arms. Her energy was gone. Evan held her tightly. "You saved us. But they'll come again." She looked up at him, exhausted but trusting. She didn't need words, her eyes said everything. She wasn't running from the past anymore. She was running with him and the hunters of the Forgotten Empire. We're not going to stop. The desert was silent again, but the ground still held the heat of Lyra's energy wave. Evan knelt beside her, helping her sit upright. Her glowing patterns flickered weakly, like fading embers. She looked drained, frightened, not from the hunters, but from herself. Evan brushed dust off her hair. "Lyra, it's okay. You saved us." But she shook her head, trembling. She lifted her shaking hand and drew a symbol in the air. A jagged spiral collapsing inward. Evan frowned. "Danger. From you?" Lyra nodded slowly. Her silver eyes filled with confusion and fear. She didn't know why she had this power. She didn't know how to control it. She only remembered flashes of pain, screams, light, then darkness. Every time she used her energy, more fragments of memory tried to break through, but they came with fear rather than understanding. Evan moved closer. "You didn't hurt me. You protected me. That means something." Lyra looked at her hands as if they belonged to someone else. Her glowing marks pulsed unevenly, reacting to her emotions. She formed another symbol, two figures together, and one falling. Evan tried to interpret. "You're afraid. You might hurt me?" She nodded again, this time quickly, almost desperately. Evan didn't hesitate. He took her hands gently, ignoring how they buzzed with leftover energy. "Listen to me. You didn't hurt me. You won't hurt me. I trust you." Her eyes widened. Nobody had ever said that to her. Not in the fragments she remembered, not in the darkness, not when she woke. Trust. Such a simple word. Yet it hit her like warm light. They both looked up as a distant explosion echoed behind them. The hunters were regrouping. Their silhouettes rose from the sand like shadows resurrecting. They were angry now and determined. Evan grabbed Lyra's arm. "We need to move before they catch up." The two stumbled across the dunes. Lyra tried to walk on her own, but her legs kept weakening. Evan supported her, guiding her through the narrow canyons shaped by ancient winds. The desert moon was quiet, but danger followed like a dark cloud. They found shelter inside a narrow cave hidden between two cliffs. Evan checked the scanner, no immediate movement behind them. For the moment, they were safe. He turned back to Lyra. She was sitting by the cave wall, hugging her knees again, shaking slightly. Evan slid down beside her. "Lyra, look at me." She hesitated, then lifted her head slowly. "You're scared of your power, I get it. But power doesn't make someone good or bad. Choices do." She blinked, thinking, questioning, wanting to believe him. "You chose to save me. Not once, but twice. That tells me who you are." Lyra's fingers moved weakly, forming a symbol, an open circle with a line rising upward. "Hope." Evan smiled softly. "Exactly. There's hope." He gently touched her shoulder. "We'll figure out your powers together. I won't leave you alone with this. Not now, not ever." Her silver eyes softened. The glowing patterns across her skin brightened, steadier now, not wild or chaotic. They responded to his calm voice, his steady heartbeat, his presence. Her first memory had been his voice. Now her first sense of safety was his voice too. Suddenly, the cave trembled. A rumbling sound echoed deep inside. Not from hunters this time, something ancient was beneath them. The scanner on Evan's wrist beeped rapidly. Lyra stood quickly, fear returning. She touched the wall and closed her eyes. The glowing marks on her arm brightened, reading the vibrations in the stone. She formed a symbol in the air, two paths crossing. Evan understood instantly. This cave connects to something underground? She nodded. The ground shook again, stronger. Dust fell from the ceiling. A crack opened under their feet. Evan grabbed her hand. Move! They dashed deeper into the cave just as the entrance collapsed behind them. Darkness swallowed everything, but Lyra's glowing skin lit their path. They reached a wide-open chamber, ancient, carved with the same glowing symbols Evan saw in the ruins where she had been imprisoned. Lyra stepped forward slowly, touching the carvings. Her body trembled as memories pressed against her mind. More symbols appeared at her fingertips, uncontrollable flashes. She wasn't just anyone. She belonged to a powerful civilization. A civilization that either feared her or depended on her. Evan watched her carefully. Lyra, what are you remembering? She turned to him, eyes full of pain and clarity. She formed one final symbol slowly, heavily. A crown. Broken in half. Evan whispered, "You were royalty." Lyra nodded, but tears formed in her eyes, because royalty in her memory didn't mean safety. It meant war, betrayal, and being turned into stone, forever. Her power wasn't a gift. It was the reason her people feared her. And now the hunters wanted to finish what they once started. Asterisk. The chamber beneath the cave glowed with soft blue light, revealing symbols older than any history book Evan had ever studied. The air felt heavier here, as if the memories of the past still lived in the walls. Lyra stood in the center of the room, breathing slowly, her silver eyes reflecting every glowing symbol. Her markings pulsed in perfect rhythm with the ancient carvings. Evan watched her carefully. Every moment she stood there, more of her past returned to her, piece by piece, like shards of broken glass forming a picture. Lyra, he whispered, what is this place? She turned to him, then lifted her hands and formed a glowing symbol. In the air, a large circle surrounded by smaller ones. A city? Evan guessed. She shook her head. Another symbol. The circle broke apart, each piece falling. Evan felt a chill. A kingdom? Destroyed? Lyra nodded. Her breathing trembled as she touched the wall. The carvings came to life, showing moving light images like ancient holograms. Evan watched as a story unfolded. A great civilization filled with towers of crystal and rivers of glowing energy, a peaceful world. Until something changed. Storms of power. Soldiers marching. Light turning into fire, and at the center of everything stood a young alien woman, Lyra, her body shining with the same glowing patterns she had now. Evan stepped closer. You were part of this war? Lyra closed her eyes in pain. She drew another symbol, slower this time, a heart, broken, with light escaping upward. Evan understood. You didn't want to fight. She nodded. The hologram shifted again. They showed Lyra standing on a high balcony, refusing to unleash her power. Against enemies, soldiers argued with her. Leaders pointed angrily. She kept shaking her head. Her energy was too strong, too dangerous. She feared she would destroy more than she saved. The next image struck Evan like lightning. A group of elite guards, wearing the same armor as the hunters, surrounded her. They activated a device that wrapped her in bright stone-like energy. She struggled, terrified, but the energy hardened around her body until she froze completely. Her own people sealed her away, not because she was evil, not because she betrayed them, but because she refused to become a weapon. Evan whispered, They turned you into stone because you chose peace. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. Her glowing patterns dimmed with sadness. She nodded weakly. The final hologram showed them carrying her stone body to the very ruins Evan found her in, hiding her deep underground, erasing her name from history. The last light faded, and the walls returned to silence. Lyra hugged her, arms around herself, shaking. She remembered the fear, the shouting, the cold darkness that swallowed her completely. She remembered thinking she would never wake again until she heard Evan's voice. Evan approached her slowly, Not wanting to startle her, he lifted her chin gently. Listen to me. They sealed you because they were afraid of your power, not because you did anything wrong. She shook her head, tears falling. You saved me, Evan said. You protected me. You protected yourself. That means your power doesn't control you, you control it. The glowing marks on Lyra's skin flickered, as if reacting to his words. Trying to believe them, suddenly the ground vibrated again. Evan checked his scanner. 3 strong signals were approaching quickly. The hunters had found the cave. Lyra grabbed Evan's hand tightly. Her eyes were wide with fear, not for herself, but for him. She remembered those same armored figures locking her in stone. Now they were coming again. And Evan stood between them, and her. Evan squeezed her hand. We'll face them together. Lyra hesitated, then formed a symbol, 2 figures standing back to back, surrounded by light. Together, Evan repeated softly. The chamber doors exploded inward. Dust and broken stone filled the air. 3 hunters entered, their armor glowing red with aggression. Their leader stepped forward. Pointing at Lyra. He spoke in the same harsh language, voice echoing through the chamber. Lyra shook her head violently. She drew a symbol in the air, a plea, a rejection, a refusal to return to the life of a weapon. But the leader only raised his blade. Evan stepped in front of her. You're not taking her. The hunters spread out, surrounding them. Lyra's markings blazed bright, responding to her fear and her determination. Energy built inside her chest, unstable, powerful, burning to escape. Evan touched her shoulder. You're not alone anymore. Her energy steadied, her breathing calmed. Her power answered him, not with chaos, but with control. The hunters moved closer. Lyra stood straighter. Her past was no longer a chain. Her curse was no longer a prison. This time, she would choose her own future, and Evan would choose it with her. The hunters stepped deeper into the ancient chamber, their red armor glowing like fire. Dust floated in the air after the explosion, and the room felt smaller, tighter, as if the past itself was closing around Lyra and Evan. The leader raised his weapon, pointing directly at Lyra's chest. Lyra trembled, but she didn't step back. Not this time. Evan stood beside her, pulse rifle ready. If you want her, he said, you'll have to go through me. The leader spoke again in a harsh, commanding voice. Lyra knew the meaning now. She remembered the words clearly. Weapon of the Empire, return, fulfill your purpose. Her markings flickered with fear and anger. She took a deep breath and stepped in front of Evan, surprising him. Her silver eyes glowed brighter as she whispered a soft breath, her closest form of speech, telling him she understood, telling him she needed to face this. Evan touched her arm. You don't have to do this alone. She looked at him, and for a moment the chamber faded. She remembered waking from stone, hearing his voice, seeing his eyes filled with kindness. He had given her something no one ever had. Choice. Lyra turned to the hunters. She lifted her hands slowly. Her glowing markings brightened into a steady, controlled light, not wild, not chaotic, but calm and powerful. The hunters paused, confused. They expected fear, not strength. The leader shouted again, this time angrier. Obey! Lyra shook her head. She formed a symbol in the air, clear, bright, final, a broken crown. Mended in light, the leader understood the message instantly. His furious roar echoed through the ruin. He charged forward, blade raised high. Evan fired, forcing 2 hunters to dive aside. But the leader kept coming, unstoppable. Evan's weapon glowed with heat as he tried to protect her, but the hunter's armor was too strong. Just as the blade neared them, Lyra stepped forward. Her markings blazed, forming a radiant shield of energy that surrounded both her and Evan. The blade hit the shield, but instead of breaking it, the energy rippled outward like water. For the first time, Lyra controlled her power. The leader stumbled back, shocked. Lyra's eyes glowed silver white. Memories flooded through her, not of war or fear, but of Evan's voice saying, "You're safe. I trust you. You're not alone." Those memories anchored her. Her energy rose like a sunrise. The chamber walls shook as Lyra lifted her hands and released a wave of light, not a blast, not destruction, but a strong, controlled force that pushed the hunters back. Their weapons sputtered, their armor cracked, their glowing lines dimmed. They could not withstand her power, not because she was a weapon, but because she was finally free. The leader dropped his blade, stunned. He stared at her, recognizing what she had become. Not a prisoner, not a sealed artifact, not a tool for war, a chosen protector. He knelt, defeated, his armor flickering. Lyra stepped forward, her voice still gone but her message clear. She created a symbol in the air-soft light, forming a circle of peace. She offered mercy. The leader lowered his head. His soldiers followed, dropping their weapons. They knew her decision mattered more than any command from the past. Evan placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder, proud and amazed. "You did it. You really did it." Lyra turned to him, eyes gentle. She touched his chest, right where his first words to her lived in her memory. She drew one last symbol, an echo of that moment, a small glowing shape, representing a voice. Her first memory. Evan smiled softly. "My voice. That's what you remember." She nodded and traced another symbol, two paths joining together. "Us?" Evan whispered. Her glowing markings pulsed warmly. "Yes." With the hunters defeated and the chamber quiet, Lyra looked around one last time. This place was her past pain, betrayal, fear, but also her rebirth. She touched Evan's hand and gently pulled him toward the cave exit. Outside, the sun rose over the desert. Warm golden light touched her skin, making her glow softly. Evan asked, "What do you want to do now?" Lyra didn't need words. She lifted her hand and drew a symbol in the sky, a star traveling forward. "A new journey." Evan smiled. "Together?" She nodded, her eyes shining. And for the first time since waking from stone, she felt truly alive, not because of her power, not because of her past, but because she had chosen her own future, and chosen who she wanted beside her. The galaxy had called her a weapon. Her people had called her a danger. Time had called her forgotten. But one human saw something else, a woman with her own voice waiting to be heard again. And now, with Evan by her side, Lyra stepped into the stars. Free,